Energy Trilemma, today's triple energy challenge of providing secure, affordable and environmentally sensitive energy. Each of the three dimensions of the trilemma is vital to the economic and social development of a country. However, perspectives on the urgency of the three pillars vary across countries. While many countries are very focused on energy security, as it is critical to fueling economic growth, there is more variability when it comes to energy access and affordability, and even more so for the environmental sustainability pillar. One of the key routes to overcoming this trilemma and providing a truly global sustainable energy system will be to find policy solutions to securing prosperity, our focus for today.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to the panel webinar on addressing energy trilemma through national energy policy, organized by the World Energy Council, Sri Lanka Member Committee. I am Kamani Jayasekara, Secretary of the Sri Lanka Member Committee. Let me briefly talk about the World Energy Council, or WEC. World Energy Council is an impartial, UN-accredited global energy body representing the entire energy spectrum. WEC promotes an affordable, stable, and environmentally sensitive energy system for the benefit of all. This is achieved by hosting high-level events, publishing authoritative studies, and facilitating the world's energy policy dialogue. Sri Lanka is among the 100 member countries of the WEC. Sri Lanka Member Committee organizes various events on energy-related topics that are of interest to the members. This panel webinar is one such event. Let's now move on to the agenda. First item is opening remarks by Mrs. Wasantha Perera, Secretary to the Ministry of Power and Energy, and also the Chairperson of the WEC Sri Lanka Member Committee. Due to an urgent official meeting, Mrs. Perera is unable to join the discussion live at the moment. She has sent a message, and let's play her message now.
Mr. Martin Young, Senior Director of the World Energy Council London Office. Engineer Mrs. Kamani Jayasekara, Secretary of the Sri Lanka Committee of the World Energy Council and its members, panelists, Dr. Lakshitha, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to all of you. I was looking forward to join you for this webinar, but suddenly there is a meeting called by His Excellency the President with the task force for reviving the economy after COVID-19, where I am a member of, and therefore I thought of leaving this recorded message in case if I am not being able to make it for the webinar in time. First, I would like to recognize the World Energy Council for their efforts to promote the sustainable supply and the use of energy for the greatest benefit of all people. As we all know, healthy energy systems are secure, equitable, and environmentally sustainable systems, and they are showing a carefully managed, balanced trilemma between those three dimensions. In a comparative ranking of 128 countries' energy systems done by the World Energy Council, I'm happy to note that Sri Lanka is among the top 10 equity improvers. But I'm sure that we are yet to achieve a lot in reaching a well-balanced and a healthy energy system in the country, and I know that all stakeholders are seriously working in reaching such targets. Therefore, I wish to thank all the members of the Sri Lanka Committee of the Council for organizing this topic, which is timely. Sri Lanka has published its national energy policy and strategies end of last year. It amply describes and declares our way forward to ensure provision of a convenient and affordable energy services of equitable development of the country using clean, safe, sustainable, reliable, and economically feasible energy supply. We, as the key officials in this whole exercise, need to manage the competing demands of the energy trilemma. Naturally, in a trilemma, when we attempt to act positively on one aspect, there is a tendency to affect two other aspects either negatively or positively. Therefore, it is challenging to maintain this balance with the risk of passive trade-offs between equally critical priorities. And therefore, I'm sure this dialogue will be very interesting to all of us. Needless to say, the importance of energy in the lives of us and the role of us all in managing energy transition. Especially with this COVID-19 pandemic, the role of energy leaders has never been more critical. One example, if hospitals and local communities don't have access to power, it could magnify the human catastrophe unimaginably. As the virus spreads in this lockdown, the availability of electricity is to stay connected and continue to communicate with one another remotely like this is a luxury that we all enjoy today. Therefore, I take this opportunity to convey my gratitude and utmost respect to those who work tirelessly in this industry for their untiring and continuous support and service. With this pandemic, whole world is now changed. New challenges emerged. Everything looks different now. This pandemic challenge has no national or geographic borders, no boundaries. Therefore, to overcome this challenge, the entire globe has to work as one nation with one aim and shared responsibilities. Ladies and gentlemen, in this situation, we might have to think afresh and revisit some of the targets that we set and some of the strategies that we have adopted. Therefore, it has to be a new way forward that we are looking at. Therefore, I believe that this forum will provide an excellent platform for a dialogue with new ideas that are more suited for a post-pandemic situation. And I wish you a great opportunity of learning and wish the deliberations of the webinar a great success. I thank you all, keen attendees who remain enthusiastic and keen about the betterment of the country even during these difficult times. Please stay safe and protected. Thank you.
I must thank Mrs. Wasantha Perera, Secretary to the Ministry of Power and Energy and Chairperson Sri Lanka Member Committee for sending an inspirational opening remarks. Thank you, Madam. May I now introduce the moderator for the session, Dr. Tilak Siembalapitiya. Dr. Siembalapitiya holds a degree in electrical engineering from University of Moratuwa, Sri Lanka, and PhD from University of Cambridge. For 12 years, he worked in planning divisions of electric utilities, both in Sri Lanka and abroad. He currently worked as a consultant in the energy sector. I am passing on to Dr. Tilak Siembalapitiya. Dr. Siembalapitiya, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good evening to all participants from Sri Lanka and worldwide. I am your moderator for this evening. We have 4 presentations lined up for today, and we will take all your questions at the end of the 4 presentations. Let me open up with giving you with some background on energy policy preparation activities in Sri Lanka, which commenced with the first version of National Energy Policy Guidelines in 1983, which was a 9-point document. And then in 1997, a more comprehensive policy document was prepared by the Ministry of Power and Energy. Making energy policy was formally established as a function of the Ministry of Power and Energy with the Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority mandated to be the lead institution to conduct policy preparation and analysis. That was in 2007. The Electricity Act of 2009 clearly identifies the separation of roles between various institutions in the energy sector and specifically identifies the Ministry of Power and Energy as the policy-making body and with the power to provide policy guidelines to the electricity industry. As the Petroleum Industry Act also comes into operation in the near future, we expect that too to clearly indicate who the policymaker is for the petroleum industry. In 2006, Sri Lanka commenced its first broad-based energy policy development exercise through a due process of public consultations, discussion in Parliamentary Sector Committee, and finally, Cabinet approval. That policy was published in 2008. Energy policy can never be static. The policy requires to recognize changing global and national needs, aspirations, realities, and limitations. Through a participatory effort that spanned over 4 years, Sri Lanka prepared and published a new national energy policy in 2019, that is last year. Today's discussions will focus on this recently approved policy document. We have 4 presenters lined up for today, so let me get on with our first presenter. Mr. Martin Young is the Senior Director, Business Insights and Scenarios of World Energy Council since November last year. Martin is responsible for the Council's Strategic Insights agenda into the energy transition. Prior to joining WEC, Martin spent 5 years leading the Emergency Policy Division at the International Energy Agency, working on the IEA's core energy security mandate. That is, to review emergency preparedness and response policies across IEA countries. He previously worked for the UK government in a variety of roles before focusing on energy from year 2002. Martin will be speaking to you on Energy Trilemma, an introduction to Energy Trilemma, as well as, most importantly, the Energy Trilemma Index. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you. I'm going to try and share my screen with you so you can see my slides. So hopefully this will work. Thank you. Just to say, I have been with World Energy Council since late 2017. And when I started World Energy Council, I was responsible for the Trilemma Index. So I've been shaping this for the last couple of years. So let me begin. The World Energy Council has been publishing the World Energy Trilemma since 2010. It now covers some 130 countries and it uses globally comparable data. It uses data from bodies like the World Bank, from the International Energy Agency, from the World Economic Forum, etc., because it aims to try and get all the different countries using on the same basis. So the same definitions of data, etc. We want it to be a global metric to measure energy policy performance. And our aim here is really for the metric to help support an ongoing dialogue about improving energy policy so that we can all have a better energy transition. We continue to improve the methodology, and that's because we want to increase the relevance of the trilemma, improve its usability and its usefulness to all stakeholders. My slide here shows we have the 3 pillars of energy security, energy equity, and the sustainability of energy systems. There is a 4th pillar, but that's country context, and that really helps us to group the countries in different ways. If I move on. To begin with, the Energy Trilemma was actually a ranking. And it was only last year that it became an index. The importance of the indexation is it allows us to have historical trend analysis of energy policy. And while I said to begin with that we've been producing the Energy Trilemma since 2010, when we introduced indexation last year, we wound back the data to 2000. So now we're able to look at top performers in the ranking, but also the best improvers. Now, the reason for this was very much that the rankings are great information, but they don't really help you try to identify how the countries became the best at the highest performance. And frequently it's because they have a very rich energy agenda. They can also be very rich countries. So if you think of it almost like a game of cards, these countries have been given the strong cards. They're not necessarily the ones who come up with the best energy policy, because those are the ones who've been dealt a weak hand and have played that well. So that's looking for the best energy improvers, and that's what the indexation now gives us the opportunity to do. Last year, we also introduced the revised country profiles. These are available online only now, but they are there for about 100 odd countries. So you can see the performance by the different dimensions, along with some trend indicators for some of the key sub-indicators. Now, just as a very brief recap for last year's overall highlights, the top 10 were very similar to as in previous years. All pretty much members of in fact, all members of the OECD, and a very heavy European bias, the only non-European one being New Zealand at number 10. This, as I said before, doesn't actually give a huge insight into how to improve energy policy. Switzerland is blessed with many things, but for other countries to learn from Swiss energy policy is perhaps more challenging. The second chart here on the right-hand side, showing the greatest overall improvers, I think is much more interesting, showing the change since 2000. Here, Cambodia and Myanmar have made huge improvements. And also, interestingly, China at number 8. People forget that in 2000, China hadn't started its huge economic growth spurt. Looking more closely within the individual dimensions, if we focus to begin with on energy security, as was said early on, countries focus on different aspects of the 3 pillars, and there is an element of trying to offset, advance in one area, maybe not advance in the others. But there is very much with the trilemma about building capability, and so it is possible to advance in all 3 directions if we enhance capability. The overall top 10 is dominated by OECD countries, rich countries, and also those very much with strong energy heritages, with a lot of hydrocarbon resources, countries like Canada, for example. The top 10 improvers have done things pretty much, for example, about improving their energy, improving their oil stock levels is one aspect, thinking with my old security hat on, but also in lessening their imports or increasing the diversity of their suppliers or their energy systems. The equity dimension is very much, we try to align to the UN SDG Goal 7 about ensuring universal access to basic energy needs and also to clean cooking. The top 10 tend to get dominated by energy producers, the OPEC countries, who have very low production costs and pass those savings on to their consumers, but also by a number of smaller European countries, rich countries that in some aspects are able to benefit from their compact size, so they are not having to transport their energy over huge distances. The equity improvers, I think, here are particularly interesting. And as noted beforehand, Sri Lanka is number 9 in the top 10 improvers. Cambodia and Nepal and Myanmar are the top three. And Cambodia and Nepal have made great efforts on extending electrification of their grids. On environmental sustainability, again, the top 10 performers are very much focused on increasing the renewables in their energy systems. The top 10 improvers are also a very diverse and interesting bunch. They are countries that people might not first anticipate being there. So, for example, China number 4, but also Qatar number 2. In the case of Qatar, their energy system could be regarded, it was very oil focused, and so they have expanded it so it is less carbon intensive, but they are starting off a lower base. At the bottom, there's two particularly interesting ones, United States and Australia. Many think the United States is a very coal-dominated system, but in reality, it's actually switched out to an awful lot of gas generation over the last 20 years. So they have improved the sustainability of their system quite significantly. Likewise with Australia, which has also been expanding some renewables and particularly wind into their energy grid. Our priorities for 2020 in the Trilemma, we will be focusing very much on producing the next iteration of the global index, using the same methodology as last year, but with our latest data, and we will launch that in October at our World Energy Week. As part of this, we're going to be looking at doing some country cluster analyses. If you recall, I mentioned to begin with that we have these there's country context. Historically, we've used that to group countries by their GDP size. We will be looking to see if we can group them in slightly different variants. And we have recently been looking at, we've done some analysis of G20 countries. I think we will also be pushing for some analysis of ASEAN countries, and there'll be some other groupings that we will see. We can produce some interesting cluster analyses that we'll try and put as part of the main report. Overall, we want to turn the Trilemma into a scalable conceptual framework. So we have at the highest level, the global, then we can dig beneath that using the same data, these country cluster analyses, where we can have different regions or different groupings of countries. The next two levels below that, we are very much in exploratory mode on. One is at national level, and that is to try to see whether there's appetite in countries to look at have a Trilemma calculation using your country's own national data. So rather than using globally comparable data, which has inherent time lags, that could be of interest to a number of countries. It also means that some of the indicators can be tweaked slightly. We also want to look at the city level trilemmas. Now, this is changing the framework slightly because it'll be moving from a quantitative indicator to a qualitative indicator. And we will do some initial exploratory work on that this year, actually to begin with looking at the city-states and the country cluster analysis. Now, part of that work has been delayed because of the impact of the coronavirus on the council. We are constraining our work, we're focusing on the essentials, and for us, the essential this year is very much to get the global Trilemma sorted and published. We'll also be looking at trying, as we move on, to try to build upon the Trilemma, to move it into a policy pathfinding tool, to try to help identify which of the countries that have had a particularly profound impact in an area, and understand what's the policy approach that they've adopted. Is that replicable in other countries? And see if we can dig in that way with our member committees. The final point I'd like to highlight is a new initiative that we are launching to improve the quality of our Trilemma country commentaries, also for our Issues Monitor country commentaries. And we have forwarded something to our member committees, and we're looking forward to Sri Lanka nominating its suggested authors to us shortly, because we will be requiring them to produce the country commentary in June, so next month. And with that, I thank you for the first part of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Martin, for that comprehensive explanation on what Energy Trilemma is and the status of the Energy Trilemma Index. Now we have our second presentation from engineer Lakshitha Weerasinghe, who is a graduate in electrical engineering from University of Moratuwa, Sri Lanka in 1994. Lakshitha holds a Master of Philosophy from University of Perera, Sri Lanka. He counts over 25 years of experience as an engineer, including 2 years in the private sector and 23 years in Ceylon Electricity Board. He is currently serving as the Deputy General Manager of Transmission and Generation Planning in CEB. And Lakshitha is one of the main contributors of the recently concluded Sri Lanka National Energy Policy document. So Lakshitha will be talking to you how Sri Lanka's energy policy attempts to address the subject of energy security. Over to you, Lakshitha.
Well, I think by now it must be clear to all of you that a good energy policy or a good energy sector of a country must be one having a balance across three trilemma dimensions. Well, those who have searched dictionaries for the word trilemma, sorry, I know that you have failed to find it, as it is a word term coined by World Energy Council. Basically, trilemma is dilemma with one additional problem. In the next 15 minutes to come, I will share with you how our national energy policy has achieved this balance while solving energy security related problems. What I would do is, I will take 2 actual case studies of problems pertaining to energy security that we encountered during the formulation of the national energy policy and take you through them to show how we balanced out the 3 trilemma quadrants. If I quickly take you through the structure of the national energy policy, it is founded on 10 pillars: energy security, access to energy services, optimum cost and efficiency and conservation, and so on. And to realize each pillar, there are a number of strategies. And for each pillar, again, there are actions, targets, milestones, and institutional responsibilities listed under the results delivery framework, which is coming at the very end. There are 95 strategies and about 75 key results, and these strategies have spanned across all 10 pillars. While all these strategies have all the time tried to maintain the trilemma balance. In the 2 case studies that I am about to share with you, I will show you how we have formulated strategies to overcome the problem while maintaining the balance across the 3 trilemma dimensions. Let me start with this very beautiful diagram. This is the energy flow diagram of Sri Lanka, and some of you may already familiar with this, and it captures in a single snapshot different energy forms that have entered the supply chain from this side on your left hand side. Their transformation to other forms of energy at the middle, and where they have ended up in as final energy in different sectors as demand on your right. These are different users of energy. This is the supply, this is the transformation at the middle, and this is the final use. You can see that petroleum had entered the diagram as finished products and also as crude, and part of it had been converted to electricity, and other part had directly ended up in the transport sector, which I will be talking a little later. Flow of electricity is shown in light blue shade. If you look carefully at this diagram gives us an alarming message. If you see from the diagram, you will see that the share of electricity accounts for less than 12% of the energy demand in the country. In 2017, it is only 11.3%. Though so much is talked about electricity, one must understand that 88% of energy used in the country is not electricity, but other forms. While everybody is busy talking about, writing and criticizing about electricity sector, behind our backs, something very dangerous is taking place that no one had really taken a note of. The renewable share in our total energy supply is going rapidly down. We have seen pages and pages written about the renewable share of electricity. But if you convert the entire electricity sector into renewables, still the incremental impact that to get onto the total energy portfolio will be only about 8%, because already electricity 40% is already renewable. So even if you convert the entire electricity sector into 100% renewable, still the incremental impact that would have on the share of renewables on the total energy portfolio will be about 8%. But you may not realize that during the last 15 years alone, that we have lost a 12% share of renewables in our total energy supply due to one single factor. That is exactly what I'm going to discuss with you a short while from now. While we are all discussing very advanced subjects like energy storage, smart grid, stability, renewable energy integration, etc., lack of something very simple is eating into the renewable energy share of the total energy portfolio under our noses. Let me explain. If you look at this diagram, this green shade is for biomass, and you will see that 45% of energy use is biomass in the country. If you further go down, you will see that 76% of energy used in the industry is still biomass. A lot of people may not understand this. You can see that even industrial users, still 76% of the country is still biomass. And even if you take the domestic commercial and the commercial sector, still 67% of energy used is still biomass. If you go on to the supply side, you can see that 36% of energy supplied is from biomass. Still in by 2017, this is extracted from Sri Lanka Energy Balance 2017, published by Sustainable Energy Authority, and with the work of my good friend Harsha, Wickramasinghe and his team, who you will be listening to short while from now. So if you concentrate on the supply side, you will see that in 1981, 68% of the share of primary energy supply was biomass. In 2005, about 15 years back, the share of biomass energy supply is 47%. So you can see that there is a big problem hand in hand while we are all talking about the electricity sector, which is less than 12% share. Our share in the primary energy supply, the biomass, the renewable share in the primary energy supply is rapidly going down. So I will take this as the first case study and show you how we had tried to address this in the national energy policy. So this is the problem. Biomass share is rapidly going down. And to put it into the energy trilemma perspective, you will see that this problem is actually impacting two quadrants. It is impacting the energy security quadrant because all these are indigenous energy supplies. And also it is impacting the environmental sustainability quadrant because the share of indigenous renewable biomass is going down. But at the same time, it is favorably impacting the energy equity quadrant because the consumers that are migrating from biomass are going for more convenient commercial energy sources such as LPG. So I will show you how we had, while formulating the national energy policy, how we had solved this energy security problem, which is a major problem. Though you may think it is simple, this is a major problem because our biomass share is rapidly going down. Unless we retain that, we are going to lose one of the biggest advantages that this country had. I will show you how we had tried to solve the problem while balancing all three trilemma quadrants. So what I do is we'll dig into the problem. If you simply dig into the problem, you will realize that there is no formal biomass distribution network in the country. Even for industrial users, the distribution is a one-to-one arrangement. And also due to convenience during cooking for domestic households, and also due to future supply security issues for industries, users are fast migrating to commercial energy forms. So let's now see how we had addressed this through the national energy policy. Right? This is the problem. I will show you how we had addressed it while balancing the trilemma. I will take you through the strategies pertaining to this. Under strategy 321, remember all strategies are listed under section 3, so they all carry the first number 3. 2 is the pillar, so these you may see that they are listed under different pillars. First, we have make sure that access to electricity using either on-grid and off-grid sources and to modern petroleum products will be ensured to all citizens. Now you have to remember, even though we try to prevent people from getting migrated to commercial energy forms, still we cannot deny them from having access to commercial energy forms. So we have first tried to ensure that by way of one strategy. And thereafter, these are the strategies directly try to address this particular problem while maintaining the trilemma quadrants. Availability of biomass will be enhanced by establishing dedicated energy plantations in prescribed biomass energy development areas in the country. There is one strategy. And also commercial availability of biomass and biomass-based fuel products will be encouraged for industrial thermal applications and household use. In fact, this is one of the major problems while people are migrating to other commercial energy forms. For example, if you look at this diagram, these are all the biomass-based products available in the commercial chain. For example, this is charcoal. This is biomass in the form of pellets. This is biomass in the form of briquettes. And you can see nicely packed chips. Even firewood can. And as a result, since biomass is not available as a commercial semi-processed product, people abandon biomass and go to other commercial products. So we have tried to establish that also by way of this strategy. And also, processed biomass as a fuel has to be facilitated through collection, processing, value addition, not merely using biomass as either log of firewood, but value addition and nurturing biomass supply chain. So all these are identified under strategy 354. Let me take further through. Improved biomass conversion devices such as cook stoves that offer an experience similar to commercial fuel-based cooking devices are to be introduced and promoted for household use to discourage migration to petroleum fuels owing to convenience. If you look at these three cooking stoves, these are all based on biomass, but they offer much more convenience, almost similar to the commercial product to using LPG. For example, I have this particular stove at home. I'm very satisfied with that. But the problem is, it is based on coconut charcoal. There is no coconut charcoal supply. So we have to address the supply problem as well as these devices. So under strategy 358, we have also identified that a lot of people may not realize that the rubber plantation industry is the major fuel wood supply for the thermal applications. Even though rubber is, you may think that rubber is to export rubber as a product, but that is one of the major contributors to fuel wood supply chain. So that has to be incentivized, and the rubber plantation has to be encouraged and expanded. So we have also identified this as a strategy. Under resource delivery framework, where the targets are, the commercial supply of biomass and biomass-based fuel products will be doubled to reach 1 million tons. Now remember, this is where the targets are. In the National Energy Policy, we have the pillars, we have the strategies, and final section is on the resource delivery framework, where you have the action, the targets, milestone, and institutional responsibilities. Always remember, a National Energy Policy targets just don't fall out of the sky. The targets must come after properly formulated strategies, or targets will otherwise not have, it will be out of place. So all these targets are based on strategies. So you can see that there is a target that commercial supply of biomass and biomass-based fuel products will be doubled to reach 1 million tons per year by establishment of 20,000 hectares of biomass plantation in government land under soft financing. And also business that provide fuel wood, businesses must be there to provide fuel wood, they must be incentivized. Also under resource delivery framework, to encourage improved convenient conversion technologies for household that I just showed you, fiscal incentives has to be provided to entrepreneurs who are engaging in manufacturing them, and also minimum 5% penetration of improved stoves using commercialized biomass fuels. Now all these are commercial biomass fuels. We expect that 5% of penetration of improved stoves using commercial biomass fuels by 2021. This is to maintain our biomass share in the total energy supply. Also, penetration of efficient low smoke, low soot biomass cook stoves that I just showed you will be increased to 10% of households by 2022. Again, under resource delivery framework, it says 10,000 hectares of unproductive land will be prescribed as biomass energy development areas, and it will be leased and also to be developed as commercial timber fuel-led plantation. And also biomass supply chains will be supported through improved collection of biomass residue to reach commercialization through pilot project by 2020. So all this you will understand now how we have tried to address this simple problem by trying to balance out the trilemma quadrants. I will again take you to the next example that I want to share with you. If you look at the energy flow diagram of the country, you will see that 44% of energy supply that had entered this diagram is petroleum, either as crude or petroleum finished products. If you look at the demand side, you will see that 43% of final energy used is petroleum. In all these sectors, 43% of all final energy used is petroleum as petroleum. Remember, this figure does not contain the petroleum that is later converted to electricity. This is the petroleum usage in the end user sectors, petroleum as petroleum. If you further go down, you will see that 65% of petroleum imports has gone to transport sector. All these petroleum imports, 65% of petroleum had ended up in the transport sector. So if you again try to, in terms of energy security, if you try to relieve relieve the country from this liquid petroleum dependency, this had gone into certain strategies. For example, the petroleum demand in the transport sector, we expect it to be gradually converted to from the road into the electrical load in the load curve by gradual electrification of the transport sector, of our vehicle fleet. Why we do that? Why we propose to do that? Because once you put all these liquid petroleum demand into the load curve, there are many indigenous renewable options to generate electricity. In fact, some of these options, even now, due to lack of load, prevent us from absorbing some of them. You know that already there is a ceiling placed on certain renewable energy absorption like wind, particularly due to this low demand profile, shape of this low demand profile in the off-peak hours. So if we can gradually electrify our transport fleet and at the same time offer time of use tariffs to attract all the vehicle demand charging to this period, this will go up. This will help to flatten the load curve. The flattening curve is a very popular phrase these days, so that even renewables can be absorbed more than what we do right now. So this is how we had put it in writing in the National Energy Policy. Gradual diversification of transport energy from present oil dominance to electricity to increase overall conversion efficiency and to relieve dependence on liquid petroleum. Remember, even though you use diesel to generate electricity and then use electricity to drive a vehicle, still the overall conversion efficiency will be still less than directly using diesel to drive that vehicle. But that is not what we want to do. We want to relieve the dependence on liquid petroleum. And also, by offering appropriate time of use tariffs, attract additional demand from electric vehicle charging to periods of lower demand. And the additional demand so added has to be used to enhance the integration of indigenous sources. So may I go quickly to the resource delivery framework. We have identified that 20% of all new light vehicle registrations shall be electric by 2022. And 25 new public electric vehicle charging stations with DC rapid charging capability has to be started. CB had already started this because of the range anxiety. No matter how big your range is, but from half of it you have to return back to the origin. So there's a thing called range anxiety. So and also encourage the private sector to set up their own charging stations. So since the time is very limited, I will stop from there and I will just share with you one interesting thing, where even the National Energy Policy has something that is often talked about in the post-COVID era. Of course, during COVID-19 era, we are still in it. Video conferencing. Our strategy 3413 says virtual offices and video teleconferencing will be promoted by making necessary changes to organizational working culture as a strategy to minimize physical movement. This is listed under minimizing transport energy. And here in the resource delivery framework, this will interest you. 30% of all government institution head officers to have teleconferencing facilities, and also officers who require more than 1 hour of travel time to participate at meetings must be discouraged from attending physically and be connected via teleconferencing. So with that, I will quickly stop my presentation because of the severe lack of time, and I will open up for questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lakshitha Weerasinghe, for your excellent presentation on how the present National Energy Policy attempts to balance the trilemma. And please send in your questions and we will take them at the end of all the presentations. So our third presentation today is from Dr. Narendra Silva, who is a graduate in electrical engineering from University of Moratuwa with a first class honors. He graduated in 1995. He holds a diploma in electrical power systems from the University of Trondheim in Norway. He earned his PhD in power electronics from the Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh, UK. Narendra commenced his career at Lanka Transformers Limited, and he currently serves as the head of engineering at Lanka Electricity Company Private Limited. In addition to being an energy policy maker and an engineer, he also holds a degree in law. So it's over to you, Narendra, to explain to us how the energy policy tries to address the issue of energy equity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lakshitha. It's a pleasure addressing you all. My task is to give you an introduction to energy equity within the context of energy policy in Sri Lanka. Actually, I will start my presentation by showing you two pictures which talk by itself. Actually, this is a picture taken from satellites of the night, the world at night. So this is a combination of multiple of images, but all what you see as V small white dots are electricity lamps. And the second picture that I'm showing you is the distribution of population. So once when we see these two images, we see a very close correlation. So this speaks for itself that today electricity, and in that regard, in the broader context, energy is no more an engineering topic. It is about the society. It's about the civilization. So just like the old civilization was sprouted around waterways, today the civilization is scattered around energy sources. And you can say either energy is defined by the civilization or the civilization is defined by the energy, whatever the way, those two are very closely correlated. So though we in the Institute of Electrical Engineers and though we, the electrical engineers, consider this energy is their own topic, this is more of a societal matter, social issue. So having said that, I will just go down to the contents of my presentation. I'll take short time of yours in presenting basically three things. Energy trilemma. I think Martin did quite a beautiful task in talking about energy trilemma. So I don't have anything more to say, I suppose, but I'll just touch it. And then I'll just go into introduce what is equity. Actually, equity is reasonability. So for all of us, I think calling it reasonability would be comfortable. But in fact, there's a clear difference between equity and reasonability because equity is the technical term. And finally, I will just as quite interestingly as Lakshitha did, I'll try to take you through one or two clauses of energy policy and to show how exactly this equity matter being addressed. I mean, to be very honest with you, equity is not being poured into energy policy in blobs. It is scattered all over. So any policy element can be analyzed within the context of energy policy. But I will try to catch one or two and try to analyze this procedural equity and the substantial equity associated with the particular element. Now, this is our trilemma picture. I'm pretty sure all of you have seen this. So, a bit of an interesting thing, we see that our indexing, the sustainability, we are fairly well off, but security and equity, we're in kind of not really placed. So it seems that whatever the policy that we coin, we got to got to strive quite hard on these two axes. And as Martin very clearly explained, this trilemma inherently got a feature. Once when somebody strives on one axis, the rest of the two axes get affected. So striving on these two axes simultaneously is kind of a challenging task. So especially a country which has two trilemmatic axes to struggle for. So our problem is quite interesting as a country. So let's see how we go forward. So in this connection, I'll first try to explain energy equity in its most commonly known form. We used to call energy equity, or we say that energy equity is being developed and measured across two axes: affordability and access. Access to energy and affordability of the energy that such access. So these are the primary two axes what we are looking at in identifying, measuring, or characterizing energy equity. But I mean, to be very strictly speaking, there are 5 axes which we got to look into when we talk about the substantial equity or the substance of equity. Affordability, access, plus due process, transparency and accountability, intra and intergenerational equity. All these 5 axes ultimately contributes to the energy equity of a country. Now having affordability and access is widely a discussed topic. Due process, of course, you can understand it is following the proper process, established process, and then the transparency and accountability is also well-known things. Inter and intra-generational equity. Shortly, I will just have a touch of what is this intra and intergenerational equity. So now, what is equity exactly? As I touched before, equity is reasonability. Now, concept of reasonability is quite a broad concept. Every one of us is having our own definition of reasonability. For me, what is reasonable? And for others, what is reasonable? So because of this, the individualistic nature of this definition, when a society is taken, when a group of people are taken, it is very difficult to exactly understand what is reasonable and what is not reasonable. So basically, everybody understands equity. Everybody understands reasonable. Be reasonable, please. It's very unfair. It's very unreasonable. These are very commonly used words. But actually, nobody knows exactly how to achieve reasonability. Everybody says it's unfair, unreasonable. Then if I turn around and say, fair enough, how to achieve it? Then everybody got their own measures and their own actions in achieving what is called equity. So this is the problem of equity. This is a problem of reasonability. I mean, even when we talk about energy reasonability, everybody's definition of energy reasonability is pretty individualistic. So having said that, I'll come to another interesting aspect or dimension of equity. Equity is not equality. I'll take a small example. Let's say I got a cake and I got 5 guys sitting around. Me cutting the cake into equal 5 pieces and distributing among these 5 is equality. But let's say one guy is having diabetes. Let's say another person is very hungry, very, very hungry. There's another guy who is full. He can't eat a single bit of food anymore. There's another person who is really fond of cake. There's another guy who hates cake. Sort of a group of people. Now, if I divide the cake among them equally, it is not fair. or it doesn't fit in to these norms of reasonability or fairness. If I try to thrust a piece of cake through a diabetes patient, it doesn't look all right. So equality and equity has a difference. So I just took this example to show you that this equity, concept of equity, is quite a broad thing. Now here I will take probably half a minute explaining intra and intra-generational equity. What it means is, now say whatever the way we say, let's say we divide this cake among these guys. Fine. Now what if that we are going to leave this table and shortly there's another group of people who are going to come here and sit here? Are we to leave some cake for them, or are we going to eat it all? So we must understand, when we are looking at the reasonability, sharing resources, there are yet generations to come. So we can't divide the resources among us equally or by equity without forgetting that fact. So that is also a very important aspect of equity. That's why that, you know, this access and affordability. Under access and affordability, we got another three. The last one is intergenerational and intragenerational equity. Equity, reasonability across the generations as well. So I'll just drop into this particular thing. Having said that, this equity is a thing that everybody understands. Everybody knows what, but nobody knows how to achieve. So there are 10 rules by which we call this modalities of achieving reasonability. So that's what I told you, this word reasonability and equity got a difference. Reasonability is a very broad, general, common term. Equity is not exactly reasonability. Equity is the technical, achievable, practical thing with an action plan. You see now this 10 elements. Equity sees that has done what ought to be done. Equity will not suffer a wrong to be without a remedy. Equity delights in equality. One who sees equity must do equity. Equity aids the vigilant, not the indolent. Equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation. Equity is in personam, individual. He who comes into equity must come with clean hands. Equity follows the law. Delay defeats equity. These are the 10 rules what we use to measure and implement equity. Now, having talked about equity in detail, now the question is this particular broader concept of equity, how to put into an energy policy and how to set the policy elements balanced in such a manner that our equity axis develops. Now, these are our 10 pillars. So I've taken one small example, as Lakshitha did. I will also try to pull out one or two examples and just show you how those maxims or the rules of equity been dissolved and physically been attached to various policy elements. Now, some small and medium enterprises will be supported by socializing part of initial electricity service connection cost via tariff. Now, this moment you say this, I mean, absolutely this is unfair. For practical purposes, this is unfair. Why? The small and medium enterprises are business. So businesses, what they do is when I increase my electricity bill, they will increase the product cost. They have a place to refer that. Now, moment that I try to subsidize them to say their initial electricity service connection or something, by socializing the cost, what happens is the socialization is every poor man, rich or poor, is going to pay for this industrialist cost. So that prima facie it looks unfair. But within the context of equity, it is exactly what to be done. Because equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation. The government has an obligation towards people, economic development, country's industrialization. So the reasonability is towards, reasonability should be directed, not that just that young girl's concept of reasonability. It is to be directed towards a particular intent. So within that context, this falls into to reasonability. So we call in law, I think most of you know, what we call is the restoration process. This is to, there's one, and in one place there is an unreasonability happening. You create another place, another unreasonability to mitigate that. Affirmative action. So this is sort of affirmative action. I'll go to another element. Households which remain unconnected to national grid due to unaffordability, even after gaining access, will be connected using innovative financing schemes.
Please conclude in 1 minute.
Yes, that is exactly our sense of equity. So this is, I mean, I don't have to argue with you. Say this is equity. It's absolutely. So equity delights in equality. Equity acts in personam. Individually, this particular thing got to be measured and distributed in personam only to the persons who need it. Delayed effectively. Say somebody, so say we open a particular scheme. You don't allow it to go forever. After some time, you stop it. So that's classic implementation strategy for that particular policy. So having said that, I'll just thank you all for listening me. And just to give you a comment that equity, energy equity in that context is a very broad topic. If you keep on reading the energy policy, you will see that the elements of equity being resolved across the policy so that one who implements the policy, our sole expectation is that particular axis, the triangle which was vivid biased, not vivid, a lot biased to the one side, will be developed in other axis, and we'll see a nice balanced equilateral triangle. We engineers and mathematicians like equilateral triangles. So let's hope that this triangle will become an equilateral. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Narendra de Silva, for handling the difficult topic of energy equity. Now we move on to the last presentation for the day. Engineer Harsha Wickramasinghe, who is a chartered mechanical engineer. He holds a degree from University of Moratuwa and an MBA from University of Colombo. He initially ventured into consulting in enterprise resource planning and promoted the concept of value perspective to enhance productivity of industrial systems. He was the key architect of the Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority law established in 2007, which paved the way to implement energy efficiency and renewable energy development with increased vigor. Currently, Harsha is serving as a Deputy Director General of Operations in the Sustainable Energy Authority of Sri Lanka. Harsha will be talking to you about the impact of national energy policy on environmental sustainability. So may I also remind our audience, please send in your questions. Immediately after Harsha's presentation, we will be taking your questions. Thank you. Harsha, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Siamalapitiya. And I hope all of you can hear me clearly. And I also would like to thank the World Energy Council for giving us this wonderful opportunity to discuss about the energy trilemma. So I have quite a limited time and I will rush through the topic of environmental sustainability, how we intend to achieve that through the energy policy. So we started laying the foundation of the new national energy policy by looking at the positive side of our society and where it will finally be in about 5 years' time. So our positives, we can count very many of them. It's a small and manageable country compared to our neighbors. It's a very small and manageable country, even though we have a substantial population. And we have a safe population growth and education and health, as we are witnessing right now. We are in par with one of the leading economies, most of the leading economies in the world. So we are blessed to have our systems in place, and we are very quick learners and willing to change. So that is a very good positive side of our society. And about the today's topic, we are endowed with 4 major renewable energy resources in the country. You may know hydropower, biomass, solar and wind. So there's enough and more energy that we capture in this little country of ours. And we have great weather. We don't need climate conditioning in most of our activities. We can sleep outside 365 days without any problem, just like we sleep inside. So frugal living by the majority. We are used to live in a very frugal living, be due to the religious and cultural learnings throughout the generations. We are not a wasteful society, and yeah, our country is in such a great location. So starting from these positives, we moved on to lay our hands on a desirable state for our country. So our Energy Trilemma dialogue, we must thank World Energy Council for bringing such clarity into this discussion. So there are 3 elements, and we used our 10 policy pillars to attack each of these elements, and the energy sustainability being one of the dimensions. And in environmental sustainability, we without even knowing that there is a global pandemic coming our way, we looked inwards. We have to be very passionate and truthful about this. We even though the going trend was globalization at the time of formulation of policy, we looked inwards, just as Mr. Lakshitha Weerasinghe and Dr. Narendra explained. We looked inwards and relying more on our inner strengths than the possibilities with better links with the outside world, and acknowledge the global trends, which is the energy transition. I think it is one element we have to be very comfortable. Whether we like it or not, energy transition is happening. So we are on one way, we are looking inwards, how to get the best out of our way forward in a outside world where energy is transitioning to a new level of sustainability, and focusing on regaining the lost share of indigenous energy. Lakshitha spent a lot of time on this. I will not. And unstoppable cost advantages of renewable energy. So renewable energy, which was a dream 10 years ago, is now cheaper than most of the orthodox or traditional forms of energy. So we are forced by so many externalities, positive ones, to adopt and move with the energy transition. And new energy carriers, this is the difficult part of it, which is the transport sector. But we foresee a great new future for our transport sector, which remains untouched to this day. It's 100% or even maybe 99.9% reliant on imported fossil fuel, as depicted by the first presenter on the Sankey diagram. So the guiding principles, when we realized that things will have to be changed, we considered on 5 major areas. So the first one is management of the large expenditure on energy commodities. This is closer to our heart than anything else, because we spent large amounts of money importing our energy. It is hovering around 25% of our all export earnings, which is such a large slice of items on any form of energy, I mean import commodity. And then expansion of the energy sector, it is expanding at a impressive rate. So our grid electrification and our fossil fuel imports, everything is growing. So we are very conscious about this expansion, and we are looking at ways of curtailing this demand growth by way of efficiency improvement and other things, and provide economic stability because as I told you, the 25% on import bill, it's not a simple thing. So timely implementation of energy sector projects and supply side equilibrium, maintaining it came the third, and protecting the environment, meeting the energy demand without having a greater impact on the environment. And about, of course, the sustainable development goals and the creation of opportunity. This is very important, a new element in our thinking about opening up sizable markets for innovation and entrepreneurship in our country. So energy transformation, as you can see, there is the status quo. I will quickly take you through. The drain of national wealth is from one side, and leading to energy crisis every now and then, and based on solid liquid and gaseous fuels, and mostly fossil fuels imported, and finite resource based. Then economic opportunity, the future, we see the energy sector as an economic opportunity, and where energy is taken for granted and never a concern. So this new thinking in the energy policy, and electricity being the major energy carrier in the future, gradually moving away from the material kind of energy carriers to electricity as much as possible. That is because that electricity can be supplied with our ample renewable energy resources, which is available locally. And developing renewable energy resources, these are the way we see the future. And energy transition is just the way we promoted, we will gain from our, whatever the gains our country is to gain from the outside world. And facing the transition, the blue line is the stark warning coming our way. Energy transition, we just have to work to face this blank wall. But if we really work hard, we can achieve the green line shown here, the effortless transition. So this energy policy is about riding the energy transition in an effortless manner. So to do that, by doing that, we will achieve our environmental objectives. So, but it is not an easy task. Energy sector today, symbolized by the triangle, will have to be a pentagon or a polygon like that, but subject to all the external stimuli like the energy transition and the internal constraints and sensitivities. So there are political considerations, technical and social acceptance issues we have to work through. But we are very fortunate, at least in this trilemma dimensions, environment is one thing, the country is on our side. So we are very happy about that. And so it's a simple list of do's and don'ts if you look at it that in that fashion. So it's a kind of a roadmap for the energy transition. So we understood the status quo and the issues and the external influences, including the energy transition, and we constructed the state of the country aspires to be in the future, not very far from now, but we set our eyes in 2050, where Sri Lanka will become a carbon neutral country. So determining how to reach that status is given in the strategies, and who will do what. This is very important, the results delivery framework, where we hold liable all the energy sector entities and the game changers to do their bit for the country. So we were finally able to publish this. It's in Sinhala, but all 3 languages are available in the website. We managed to publish this on August 9th and table this in the parliament in October. So it had 10 pillars, 95 strategic interventions, and 75 key results. And I will very quickly take you through because of the time pressure. Some 14 odd elements. Inventory of indigenous energy resources fully documented, and biomass elevation to formal fuel, transport evidence and related savings, energy efficiency, a major national drive, a fiscal measure supporting sustainability drives, a modal shift of transport, and mandatory building code. Then the new energy carriers like electricity and hydrogen, renewable energy to the forefront, and carbon footprint reduction through sequestration, the electricity board and other generation companies to help us in this, and continuous monitoring of stack emissions. All these things are helping the environmental sustainability, and the digitalization and data harvesting for better decision making, electricity markets and power wheeling. So these new elements, and finally the consumer empowerment through the latest technologies available, taking people to make the correct decisions. And land as a primary resource. I told you the great things about the country. One negative thing about our country is our country is small, so we have to be very careful about our precious land resources. So we have taken that as a policy element, very much cognizant to the fact. And innovation will hold the keys for our success. So thank you very much for listening to me all this time. Thank you very much.
Fine. Thank you very much, Harsha. And for those of you who have still not perused through the Sri Lanka National Energy Policy, the energy policy document is available in the website of Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority, and you can download, and it's available in all the 3 languages as well. So keep your questions coming in for Mr. Harsha Wickramasinghe as well. And now we have the Q&A, and I have the permission of the host to have the full 20-minute duration dedicated for Q&A. We have got a very large number of questions, so I will have to combine some of the questions so that we economize on time. So, and I will go in the same order of the presentations. So let me first turn to Martin. Martin, as a schoolboy who is getting low marks and being concerned about that, and also his parents are concerned, the Sri Lankan energy community is concerned that we have got low marks for energy equity. Can you elaborate the possible causes for Sri Lanka to perform not so well on this account? And of course, I know that World Energy Council has been very polite in saying that Sri Lanka should keep this as a priority. So given the fact that Sri Lanka has achieved 100% electrification and many other initiatives in establishing equity and access, what could be the reason for Sri Lanka to not so well on energy equity?
Thank you. I don't know if there's time for me to briefly show you the second part of slides that I've got. Could actually show a little bit more detail of the Trilemma score. Happy to skip them if not. But I didn't think, in my slides, I had a comparison of an Asian average, the Asia region for the council, with Sri Lanka. And on equity, you were below average in comparison to other Asian economies in the World Energy Council. Now, for the reasons, in actual fact, as highlighted earlier, Sri Lanka is actually doing very well on the trend on equity has been good. It's been growing. It's as noted at the very beginning, you're actually in number 9 in the top 10 improvers over the last 20 years. But actually looking through, just looking through the data on things and the explanations that the committee has previously provided, there's been good progress on energy access, and I think there could be further work on that. But there's been less progress on access to clean cooking. So that seems to be an area that there could be further targeted policy intervention on. And I think some of this was touched upon in some of the earlier presentations. Aside to that, I'm too external to know about what would be the best or the reasons for it.
All right, thank you very much, Martin, for that explanation. Unfortunately, we had no time to look at your slides back again and your extended bunch of slides. Now I turn to Mr. Lakshitha Weerasinghe, who presented many issues. And I have got many questions for him, but I've grouped them into 2. So the first question is, as much as we speak about supporting biomass as a commercial fuel, not rubber wood, but other forms, there is no real development of energy plantations, and the reason appears to be the low price. And the strategy towards pricing or making pricing attractive to suppliers and growers doesn't seem to be there in the policy. So therefore, the policy may not work. So that's my first question. Let me give you the second question as well. Strategy on electric cars has failed due to non-availability of replacement batteries. So what are the solutions the policy would be suggesting? And perhaps Lakshitha, in your role as the planning head in the utility, to improve this situation. Over to you, Lakshitha.
I will take the first question on the price of biomass. One thing you have to rely on is the supply and demand theory. So right now, there is no commercial supply chain of biomass. So as a result, since there is no established chain of either biomass in the form of firewood and logs or in the form of processed products, there is no supply coming in and there is no demand for such products. So what you have to put in place is this system, so that once you have this biomass supply chain, people will start using it. The moment people will start using it, the price will go up and the supplies will naturally come in. So in between, yes, if the government so want, they can intervene and make prices, set prices. But the best way is to let the markets work out the prices. To do that, we have to nurture the market. So that is why what we had thought of through the national energy policy, we had not asked for government intervention by way of subsidies, because there is not much thinking required to recommend that. Anybody can ask the government to give money, which is nothing unusual. But whereas we went through to the problem to try to understand the real problem behind, I think is you have to make the system work, the biomass supply chain, the process biomass supply chain, starting from the supply, storage, processing, value addition, the entire supply chain. And also you have to recognize, for example, thing like the rubber plantation. A lot of people don't think that the dual role the rubber plantation plays in the country. Rubber plantation is not only to make rubber and export or make rubber-based products, but it is one of the largest timber suppliers and also fuel suppliers, residue supplier. So we have to put these supply chains into place so that then the demand will grow up, and along with demand the price would go up, and along with the price the supply would come in. So that is the way that I think we should work on. On a second question on electric vehicles, yes, once again, when the electric vehicles drive is not only local, it's a global thing. All the countries try to go towards electric vehicles, and sometimes my other panelists will also remember, we gave a lot of thought into whether electric vehicles would move ahead or whether the hydrogen hybrid vehicles would go ahead. Before we thought, okay, well, let's start with electric vehicles. So when the electric vehicle industry start, gather momentum, these things would put into place. So as you all know, electric vehicles is not a new thing. Even 100 years back, we had electric vehicles on our streets. If there are pictures there in Sri Lanka where if you count the number of vehicles, only vehicle that is driven by some motor is electric vehicle. All others are either driven man-made or bullock carts. So electric vehicles were there, but due to certain reasons, that market didn't grow. But now we see that there is an international trend that people are going towards electric vehicle. So with that, these sort of things would put in place. So rather than wait till a fully market to grow and make available, it's better to start, so that when the changes in the world are taking place, like there's a rapid reduction to the battery costs, along with that, we also can move in that direction. So I think, yes, there are certain problems with replacement batteries, but even those problems will be solved in other countries so that we can, take use of those. Thank you, sir.
Yes, fine. Thank you, Lakshitha. May I have just one follow-up question? A quick question. I would like to have a quick answer from you. Given the fact that Sri Lanka's actual problem is developing potential indigenous resources, should we actually call this energy security, or should we not call it energy self-sufficiency in our trilemma?
Energy security, and if you map the 10 pillars into energy security, self-sufficiency also contribute to energy security. So that is something that contributes to energy security, because that will assure the long-term supply, the current and long-term supply of energy supply. So that is directly contributing to energy security dimension.
Fine. Thank you very much, Lakshitha. I will move on to Dr. Narendra Silva. I have several questions for him, but let me combine many of them in the following manner. The energy policy also has an element of cost reflectivity in energy services. And how would equity and cost reflectivity be balanced? And the second part of that question is that what are the initiatives, if any, in the energy policy to ensure or to start off with targeted subsidies for energy rather than blanket subsidies? Narendra? Dr. Narendra Silva? Hello?
Yes, I hope now you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Now, actually, as I told you, equity and equality are not the same. But in one of the maxims, you saw equity is delighted by equity. Sorry, equity is delighted by equality. So this tariff and the cost reflective tariff is equality. So basically, everybody in the equal platform being treated. And equity is not equality. Equity will not merely develop by equality. We need to do affirmative action. We need to do corrections. We need to provide subsidies in a society. As I told you, it's a societal matter. This is not we are looking at engineering, mathematical exercise. We are looking at a society to be developed, society to be sustained. So because of that reason, cost-reflective tariff is the basis. Equity is delighted by equality, but cost-reflective tariff is not the world's best perfect tariff. There are certain affirmative actions, corrections to be done. I think that's where it stands. And target subsidies, these targeted subsidies and non-targeted subsidies are, I mean, out of the question. What I feel is always it should be targeted subsidies. Non-targeted subsidy is not equity, but it's unreasonability. Now, look here now in Sri Lanka, we got people who are using about 300, 400 units, who are paying about 30, 40,000 rupees electricity bills, who are really, really rich guys, getting first 30 units for very low price. The whole idea is to give cheap electricity to poor people. But that wee bit of electricity provided as the lifeline tariff to these people, even these most rich people are enjoying. What is the reason? Reason being that we don't have a proper meter, a sophisticated meter to do this segregation or tariffing. Or probably some other reason, probably political or something, which still this particular thing is made. So those sort of non-targeted subsidies falls out of the context of equity, and in fact falls against equity to unreasonability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For Mr. Harsha Wickramasinghe, I have two questions. And even within those two questions, I have combined many questions from the audience. The first one is related to the role of Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority and the Ministry of Power and Energy in making policy. So the first question is what we got, in fact, before we started the discussion. Who exactly is responsible in making policy, conducting policy analysis, and updating policy? And the second part of your first question is, now that we have a new policy dated 2019, is there any attempt to look at the achievements of the year 2008 policy as to how have we scored and what have we achieved? So I will allow you to ask the first question.
Yes, I think you can hear me. I will answer the second part of the question. We have, when we were just after the 3-year period was completed in 2010, we have done a kind of analysis of to gauge the success of the previous energy policy and found out about 60%, 66 or 2/3 level of achievement. So I think that is quite a reasonable expectation, and we are quite happy about the achievements of the previous energy policy. And about the role of who should be making the policies, actually there's severe arguments even between the colleagues of mine who are within the Energy Policy Committee, who should make policy. Actually, it is the policy making should be done by the representatives of the people. So people who are elected to the parliament, that is their job to make policies. But as we understand, they are not the experts in a given domain. So they rely on the officials and the experts in the manning these sectors to develop these policies. So when we frame the Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority Act legislation, this fact was taken into consideration, and there is a written down policy, mandatory obligation from Sustainable Energy Authorities Act that we provide the support to formulate national energy policy to the ministry in charge of the subject of energy. So it's very clear, the ministry makes the policy on behalf of the elected representatives in the parliament, and the Sustainable Energy Authority, we have to support that effort. Okay.
Yes, fine. This has to be the last question, unfortunately. Energy used for transportation is a high share. As discussed, one solution for reducing energy for transportation is to promote electric vehicles. But equally important factor is to enhance and promote public transportation system. What is in the energy policy that would be perhaps picked up by the transportation agencies, or in fact in combination with the transportation agencies, that will take us towards a more energy efficient public transportation system?
Yes, to answer that very simply, we develop the transport aspect of the policy based on the avoid, shift and improve framework, which is very well known to our transport sector colleagues. So improvement is one key area our public transport agencies must take care of, because our society has developed quite well, even though we always bitterly complain about for the last 70 years nothing has happened in this country. I beg to differ. There's so much development that has taken place in our society. So people as a society, they have entered higher level of living standards. So they expect better and decent public transport. If that is provided at great expense to the national coffers, I must say, people will definitely move to public transport, because so many of us hate driving our own vehicles to work. So if there's a decent way to travel using public transport, like all the other developed countries, there will be many takers. That is my wish. But the present transport sector, they think, not the transport sector people, but the government in the middle, they tend to treat public transport as a cost element. Actually, it is not. It is a great savior. If you don't support your transport sector, public transport with ample subsidies, people will definitely find their way to work using private transport at a tremendous energy cost and time and everything productivity losses, the status we are right now in. So it's a government duty to invest very heavily in the improvement of public transport. So one great side in this I can see is the railway development work. Dr. Siamala Pitya knows this well. The railways department is they have taken the first bold step in this. So road transport also, if they are sensitive to the people's need and the new level of expectations among the people, I think we have to put our act together and maybe move away from the present structure of a large number of single bus owner philosophy to a better managed and well-structured public transport thing. And not forgetting the great services provided by the taxi system, the electronic taxi systems like the Uber and PickMe. So these things have provided last mile connectivity to many of my colleagues who were dependent on their private transport. Now they use public transport, counting these things to be public. So it is a great saving to the country and a great improvement in the public sector. So these new developments we have to embrace and provide the level of service expected by the society, then things will change.
Thank you very much. And to our audience, for the purpose of record, we have received more than 60 questions, out of which 50 were online. And out of the online questions, we have been able to combine and present to the panel about 12 questions. And from out of the questions we received in advance, we have taken only one question. So thank you very much to my panel, Mr. Martin Young, Mr. Lakshitha Weerasinghe, Dr. Narendra de Silva, and Engineer Harsha Wickramasinghe, and you, the audience, for your patience and for your support in conducting this panel discussion in a successful manner. Now, back to you, to the Sri Lanka Member Committee of the World Energy Council.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siamala Pitya. It's time for us to draw the curtains. On behalf of the World Energy Council Sri Lanka Member Committee, I would like to thank the moderator, all the panelists for their valuable time, and the participants, which was around 200 at peak. Hope you all gained a good insight about the national energy policy. Hope to see you in our future events as well. Have a safe lockdown time and good night from Colombo.